ahead and call to order this meeting of the Greenfield Conservation Commission at 6:32 p.m. on September 28th, 2021. All commission members are present. Just a note that this meeting is being held virtually, and if any technical interruption occurs and the meeting ends, it will not be resumed, and all items will automatically be continued at the next scheduled meeting date, which will be in 2 weeks. Also, this meeting is being recorded. If anyone else is recording this meeting, you are required to let us know at this time or prior to beginning recording. Is anyone else recording? I do not hear anyone else recording. So the first item on the agenda is approval of meeting minutes for September 14th and September 17th.
A motion to approve the minutes from September 14th first.
Okay.
Really nice.
Fletcher, I saw your mouth move, but I don't hear anything. Was that a second? Okay, second by Fletcher. Is there any further discussion on the minutes from September 14th?
Yeah, I had a question about the so it's a correction, but it's a correction from the meeting, I believe. Had motion for a negative determination, box 2. In fact, it should have been a negative determination, box 3, because we added special conditions. And I realized that after, when I was reviewing, because box 2 would have meant no conditions and box 3 is with conditions. So I'm not sure what the proper procedure is to correct that, because if we've issued the special conditions and discussed that, then in effect, what we did was approve negative determination box 3.
I'm also not sure what to do in that situation.
Should we do another motion? Well, I guess that would mean a public meeting, right?
That's what I'm not sure about.
Okay.
Might I make a suggestion?
Sure.
I would have the chair correct it. And then have that in your minutes now. Just simply say that it was an error in the checking of the box, and not that you've changed your decision, because it sounds like your decision was clearly with conditions.
That sounds good to me.
Notify the applicant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the clerk, because I think you have to file this with them.
I think that the applicant shouldn't have any issues with that, since they agreed to all of the conditions that we discussed. So if that sounds like a reasonable solution.
Okay, so on the request for determination of applicability, construction of a new single-family home and septic system on Log Plain Road, map R08, lot 6. Correction that the box checked previously was a type 2 when it should have been a type 3. I guess that can be in our minutes for tonight. And then if Hannah would reach out to the applicant with that information.
I can do that.
Okay.
That was my only comment.
Any, looks like Fletcher is still having some issues. He said he was going to restart and come back, but maybe let's give him a minute in case he has some comments on this. Just a note that I sent a message to Fletcher through the chat asking if he is back in the meeting. But I have not received a response yet.
We do still have quorum.
Yeah, we do. I just didn't know if he might, if he had something to add to that. Okay, it seems like Fletcher is having technical difficulties. So, is there any other discussion on this? It doesn't sound like there is. All right. We can vote on approving the minutes. I guess the minutes will be corrected to say that that was a type 3 instead of a type 2. Other than that, the minutes will be accepted as they are. Any commissioners against that motion? Any abstaining? Okay, and that passes unanimously. Fletcher just sent me a oh. Now Erica is exiting and coming back because her microphone is not working. So, okay, let's give a minute for Fletcher and Erica. Sorry, everybody. Technical difficulties. Okay, Fletcher's video is back.
Can you hear me or no?
Yes, you're
Oh, wow.
good now.
Third time's the charm.
Yeah. Okay, now we're waiting on Erica to come back because her audio is not working. Erica was going to call in. I guess if someone wants to motion for the next minutes, we can start a discussion and wait for Erica while we're discussing.
I will motion to accept the minutes from 9/17.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Okay, seconded by Kristen. Yeah, so just a reminder to the commissioners that typically we write the minutes from a recording of the meeting, and that meeting, our recording did not work. So hopefully this one has been reviewed thoroughly. I believe I have one addition, which is I was recalling who else was present in the meeting, and I believe Phil Elmer was at this 9/17 meeting. Phil, I see you're on the call now. Can you confirm that? I believe you were there.
Yes, I was.
Okay, yeah. So we can add, that's one addition to the also present would be Philip Elmer.
Doug Selwyn as well. Actually, I forgot to look at the also present. I have
Yes,
some notes
Doug
on
was
that.
there. This is Jan Mayer. Both Doug and I were there.
Okay, thank you.
Would you be willing to spell Doug's last name, please?
Sure.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
SELWYN.
Thank you.
And Bob Williford. Sorry, I seconded that before I checked the list of attendees.
Well, that's
Bob
okay. We haven't
Williford.
voted on it yet. This is just
Okay.
discussion.
And then I don't know who JCMAH is, but they're also present tonight.
That's me, Jan Mayer, JANMAHER.
Thanks, Jan.
Okay, and I do see Erica back in, so just to let Erica know, in case she was out, we voted. We didn't vote. There was a motion to accept the minutes from 9/17, and now we are discussing that.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Is there any further discussion on the minutes from 9/17? Okay, hearing no further discussion, we will vote on the motion to approve the minutes. All commissioners against the motion? Any commissioners against the motion? Anyone abstaining? Okay, then that one also passes unanimously. So the next item on the agenda is staffing update, and I'm guessing that is something Hannah will be presenting.
Yeah, so it is with sadness that I inform the commission that I will be putting in my resignation on Thursday, as I have received a full-time offer for a position with the town of Whately.
Okay, that seems to be our luck. We appreciate you being here with us, but obviously I can't speak for the commission, but I understand leaving for a full-time position. So
Yeah,
yeah.
this has been a really awesome position, and I really truly am sad to leave. Thank you.
Congratulations. On the full-time,
Thanks.
Yeah.
position, though.
Okay. Well, to keep things moving, I guess we'll move on to the next agenda item. We have no scheduled public meetings or hearings tonight. We had one, and the applicant was not able to attend, so that has been pushed back to our next meeting. Do we have any enforcement updates, Hannah?
No enforcement updates.
Okay. Final approval of Log Plain Road RDA determination paperwork.
Yes, so there are two things that I wanted to bring up to the commission. I'm going to share my screen really quickly.
Okay.
One was I'm pulling up the documentation before I share my screen. One was the approval of the conservation agent to do the electronic signatures in light of COVID. In the prior RDAs, it mentioned Cassie Tragert by name. So I think that there should be a vote to change that so that it either just says conservation agent or it says conservation agent Hannah Davis. I will share my screen so that you can see what I'm talking about. So here it says motion to authorize the conservation agent Cassie Tragert to electronically sign Greenfield Conservation Commission documents. If you're still willing to have Conservation Commission documents signed, like I said before, I think we should put it to a vote again.
Mm-hmm.
The other is that I wrote the conditions, the special conditions that we were talking about, and I wanted to run it by the commission to make sure that this is what they wanted it to reflect.
Okay.
And then the third thing actually was what we mentioned earlier with checking the wrong box for the determination. So that's
Okay.
handled and great.
All right.
Well, I think especially given that that you only have that you're putting in your resignation, Hannah, I'll motion to strike Cassie Treader's name from the authorization for digital signature and simply state that the Conservation Commission agent is authorized to electronically sign documents on behalf of the commission.
Second.
It's a second by Erica. Any further discussion
Second.
on that? Okay, any commissioners against the motion? Anyone abstaining? Okay, that motion passes unanimously to strike Cassie's name from that approval. And yeah, the special conditions. That's what I recall. I don't know if any other commissioners have any comments.
This
I
comes
personally
from,
can't. Oh, go ahead.
sorry, this comes from the recording of the meeting. So the wording is exactly what I had from the recording of the meeting. I just want to make sure that I didn't miss anything, honestly.
Yeah. And
I think that we included our boilerplate conditions in that, correct? I think that's what the minutes stated too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I guess my question is, are these special conditions in addition to the boilerplate conditions?
Yeah, these are specifically the special conditions. Yeah.
got it. So you're just calling them out on the same page.
And just in case one of the commissioners can't see this, I'll just read them out. The 4 pine trees identified on the site plan located within the 25-foot no disturb zone shall be snagged to a minimum of 15 feet. The second condition is heavy machinery shall not cross into the 25-foot no disturb zone. I think that looks good.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, thanks.
That was all I had. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, okay?
Okay.
Great.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is 87 Stone Ridge Lane property auction update. Yeah, so I know there are some various commissioners, I think, have been looking into different things. So just a reminder, at our last meeting, the mayor let us know that the auction was pushed back once again another week to October 13th. And so that's what we learned at the last meeting. I will go ahead and share. I will share something here. So one of the things at the last meeting was that the mayor the mayor authorized us to contact the city's attorney on tax title properties. And so we came up with a list of questions, and I sent those to the attorney as we said we would. And then I got some responses. So we can look at those. Let me share this. So this might be a little hard to read.
Read to us, because
yeah, so I will read it out loud. So the first question was: is the city legally required to sell these tax title parcels, 87 Stone Ridge Lane and the adjacent 13-acre parcel, or could they be retained by the city without going to auction or sale first? Answer: properties foreclosed on through land court tax title process can be retained by the municipality. If the city would like to transfer the property interdepartmentally, that is acceptable. Generally, this requires a vote by a city council or select board. However, foreclosed on tax title properties cannot be transferred to a private person or entity without going through a public auction or sealed bid auction. So that leads into question 2, which was what legal options are available for selling these parcels other than by auction? Could they go through an RFP process, as one example? And the answer from the attorney is there are 2 options for the city to sell the parcels. One would be an open and public auction under the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 60, Section 77B. The Commonwealth says that a municipality may sell at a public auction. It is not the only way to sell foreclosed parcels. The other option to sell a tax title foreclosure would be under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30, Section 16. This process is outside of the attorney's area of representation, but the city council will be familiar with this process and what it entails. This is a good way to sell a parcel with restrictions because then you can reasonably limit the use of the property. When a property is sold, the amount that the city should accept for property should approximate the fair market value. And the third question that I sent was, can the parcels legally be handled separately? For example, could the city sell one parcel at auction and keep the other for conservation land? The answer: yes, the city can sell 87 Stone Ridge Lane and not the other Stone Ridge Lane parcel in this case. These parcels are separately assessed. The tax title custodian, the treasurer, has a fiduciary duty to the taxpayers. So usually properties are sold timely to get them back on the tax rolls and to recoup anything possible from the sale of the foreclosed property. And just to clarify, if anyone isn't familiar with the fiduciary duty, basically they have a responsibility to, basically make as much money for them as possible. Basically to have the taxpayers' best interest in mind. So number 4 was, does the law require a specific timeline for selling the properties, or is the timeline solely up to the mayor or some other city employee? Answer: there is no statutory requirement for the sale to happen under a specific timeline. The tax title custodian, the treasurer, has the obligation to manage the tax titles. This includes getting the parcels sold and back onto the tax rolls, which is the goal of the tax title foreclosure process. Question 5. This one has a long quote, and I might not read the whole quote because it isn't actually the question. It's just for reference. The following are quotes from the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions handbook that conservation commissions use as a resource for what they're able to do, and the full section from the handbook related to tax title properties are attached to the email that I sent to the attorney. So this whole quote outlines what the tax title process is, and then at the end it says, after foreclosure, at this stage, the town meeting or city council can transfer control of the land to the Conservation Commission under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40, Section 15A. And then another quote is just saying the same thing, essentially. So then I asked, are these quotes, or as these quotes relate to the process the Stone Ridge Lane parcels have undergone, would the city council with mayoral approval at this time be able to transfer control of one or both parcels to the Conservation Commission as mentioned above? Answer, yes. The properties can be transferred from the care and management of the tax title custodian to another municipal department, etc., by vote of the city council with mayoral approval. And then question 6. I'll read this whole thing. The following is another quote from the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions handbook. The quote reads, although the transfer method has the advantage of being free, a commission with a conservation fund may save itself time and trouble. It can do so by purchasing tax title land after strict foreclosure by the treasurer, by using commission funds to pay the accrued taxes and costs, and obtain a deed in the name of the city or town for conservation purposes. And then my question was, as this quote relates to the process of Stone Ridge Lane parcels have undergone, would the Conservation Commission at this time be able to purchase one or both of the parcels using the method mentioned above? Answer, I believe if the city council, etc., does not agree to transfer the property to the Conservation Commission, then the commission would have to purchase the property at auction. Otherwise, if the parcels are transferred to another entity of the city, it would not be considered a purchase. The tax title custodian, at the direction of the city council, can transfer the property to the inhabitants of the city of Greenfield for conservation purposes. Question 7 was, if the Conservation Commission will be able to pay back taxes and fees as stated in the previous questions, can the Conservation Commission legally fundraise from the public to pay the back taxes and purchase? The commission believes this may be possible by public donations being deposited into the Conservation Fund, as described on page 4 of the MACC newsletter under the Conservation Fund heading attached to this email. Answer, I do not know what the law is related to this. The City Council may be able to give you some guidance on this. Basically, that was a question outside of tax title law, so there are a couple like that the attorney was not able to answer. Question number 8 was, is the Concom legally required to hold a specific financial account for each conservation land? Answer, unfortunately, I do not know the answer to this. Maybe the treasurer, Kelly Varner, would know about this. Question 9, does Massachusetts law, Chapter 21, Section 17C apply to the city-owned conservation land, and therefore the city would not be liable for injuries if the land was kept for recreational purposes and there was no fee to use it? Answer, I solely practice in the area of tax title foreclosure. I am not sure what kind of liability the city would face related to use or injury or on a recreational property without a fee. And then the final question, are there any legal reasons the city couldn't add a trail easement to the 6-acre parcel before selling it? Answer, if it is possible, I think is what it's supposed to read. It reads, if it's possible.
It is possible.
Oh, it is possible. Okay, well, I'll just read what it says exact word for word. If it possible to add restrictions to a property for sale at auction, these restrictions would be included in the deed recorded after a sale. However, in general, adding restrictions or easements will lower the amount the city will be able to sell a property for. So that was an update on our questions to the attorney. Do any of the commissioners have any comments or questions on that one? Any discussion?
No, I just want to point out that it looks like the answers backed up most of our research, and I'd be interested to see us compare those responses to the treasurer's letter, just to make sure that, yeah, just to sort of compare the two and make sure we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah, and I will add that when the attorney sent these answers back to me, she also copied the mayor and the treasurer on that email. So we shouldn't have to reach out to either one of them to let them know what the answers to this were, though maybe it wouldn't hurt. So I think, Fletcher, you were talking about this email from the treasurer.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I also sent an email to the treasurer asking what the taxes and fees were accrued to this point in case we were able to pay those off and acquire the land that way. And this is the response that I got from the treasurer. Hi, Travis. At this point, all back taxes have been extinguished because this property was foreclosed on by the city 12/20/19. After a foreclosure occurs, the law only allows a redemption period of 1 year for the back taxes to be paid off to revert to revert title to the property of the former owner. That would have had to have occurred by 12/20/20, which has gone by, obviously. At this point, your only option is to buy the property at auction or have city council vote for the city to sell it to the Conservation Commission. If we sell it after a vote by the city council, I believe we have to get fair market value for the property, not just what was owed for taxes. I'm copying our lawyer, Iris Leahy, which is the person I actually emailed those questions to, on this email to verify this. I am also not certain a commission can actually purchase a piece of property because of the liability associated with it. I believe this was discussed with the mayor, but again, I will defer to Attorney Leahy. Hopefully she can give you some answers. I'll be out of the office Monday and not be available by phone or email. So yeah, just to compare and contrast, it sounds like the treasurer is not aware that the city council can transfer the property at this time to the Conservation Commission without any payments necessary. And not to put all of the blame on us, but it might be that we haven't acquired any conservation land since 1998. So I think I think everyone else in city government may have forgotten how that works if they have even been working there that long. So not that they shouldn't know how things are done, but that was something that occurred to me was we haven't done this in over 20 years. The commission hasn't. So it's not too surprising to me that city employees are not aware of how we could acquire these properties.
Also, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I just was, did you know whether she got that email from you after she saw the answers from the lawyer?
Oh, I received this email from the treasurer before I received the contact information for the lawyer. So
Okay,
this
so
this email was before the lawyer had responded.
Okay, so she didn't see the lawyer's or answers before she answered you.
No.
And it's clear here that she also copied the lawyer on that. So I think we can assume that the lawyer is correct in terms of that procedure. I was trying to figure out how we would actually purchase a property at auction, and it was one thing that struck this was that it was surprising to me that anyone would suggest that the Conservation Commission would go to a public auction to purchase land that was up for auction by the city, since you have to show up with a bank check for $5,000. So I assume I don't know if there's any precedent for that. It struck me as being very odd. We would have to go to Kelly Varner to request a $5,000 from our own city in order to be able to then go and publicly bid on land from our own city. So I don't think that's we haven't discussed that as an option. But but it just struck me as very odd.
Yeah. And I will say that I do believe it's possible because I started looking into this whole conservation fund thing. And so this is a newspaper article from March 24th, 1970, where the Greenfield town meeting voted to appropriate $7,500 for funding the Conservation Commission, which was set up by a previous town meeting. The article establishes a conservation fund to be expended by the commission. And essentially, so at a previous meeting, we looked at some, the different accounts that we own. And the one that's called a conservation trust, that one is our conservation fund. I received an email from the city accountant who confirmed that to me. And essentially, a conservation fund, we can use that. We don't need any approval from city council, the mayor, anyone, and we can use that for any open space purpose. The only thing we can't use it for is Wetlands Protection Act or Greenfield's, Wetlands Protection Ordinance. So anything related to open space, we could buy property. We could buy property at auction. We could buy it directly from a seller. We can build trails with it. We can have signs, maps. We can pay for conservation restrictions, any of that. So another thing that I learned, treasurer, let me go back to the meeting. So here's from the accountant. Our trust currently has $4,327.04 in it. So obviously that's not enough to buy this property at auction. And what has happened in the past is when the Conservation Commission buys a property, the city council votes to basically give the Conservation Commission money, which the Conservation Commission then uses to buy the property. And one other thing that I learned was that the Conservation Fund, any member of the public can donate funds into our Conservation Fund, and it only requires the approval of the mayor. So if we did want to fundraise, for purchasing property or any other conservation land purpose, people could donate directly to us into our conservation fund with the approval of the mayor. So that's something I wanted to add, even though it's starting to get a little bit far away from this property. So I'm not sure what the next steps are for, this property. It sounds like we have all the answers that we can do what we wanted to do. The city could do what we discussed, which at our last meeting we said the city could keep the 13-acre parcel as conservation land and sell the other parcel. So it sounds like we, all it needs is the mayor to approve and withdraw that 13-acre parcel, and then the city council would have to vote to transfer that property. I know we have, Sam Lovejoy contacted me and wanted to talk about this at our meeting. So if you don't mind, I'll turn it over to Sam for a minute. You're currently muted.
Oh,
okay. There you go.
Okay. I mean, well, thank you for inviting me. This is a complicated area. I've done land conservation for about 40 years. I worked for the state for 9. I did at least a dozen municipal purchases for the Department of Fish and Game. I've done many with towns. And I would first say I'd like to describe to you for a moment how the law flows, and then point out to you that Greenfield is a little bit of a trick. Not necessarily a bad trick, but slightly unusual. So the law says that the tax collector has 3 years to take a property. They do it by going to land court. They cannot do what's called the foreclosure of redemption, which means the ability of the owner to try and get the land back for a 4th year. So I think the law, it's really clear. I mean, ridiculously clear that the town, or the city of Greenfield did not own this property. The city did not own this property until June 24th of 2021. That's 4 years. That's the legal requirement. And the owner could easily at least have fun and make a mess of this whole thing by saying they took it a year in advance. So that's one thing. The second thing, and then the moment that it is the right of redemption is ended, and that occurred on 1/3/20, and then there was the petition for the judgment. The term of art is that when the treasurer becomes the quote unquote custodian of the property, that person, the treasurer, the magic words are custody and control. And the treasurer has custody and control. Now, my only problem here is that because Greenfield is a funny thing, and you have a charter which kind of makes it a little mysterious to me. I've read this at least a half a dozen times. I've reached out to David Singer. I've known him for 30, 40 years. He's on vacation, be back on Friday, so that I can try and understand what the Department of Municipal Finance has to do with the way the law works with what the rights are of the treasurer. So I'm just, that's a mystery to me right now. The Concom is a public entity. And because of that, state law says that you cannot buy a property at an auction because you have to have an appraisal to buy a property. I know that sounds squirrely, but the fact of the matter is they're trying to protect taxpayer money, and they don't want you to go to an auction that somehow gets weird. So you can't pay if it's not been appraised. That's not necessarily a danger. So what many times the state would do is they would ask a land trust to go to the auction. But the major thing I think needs to be thought about, and maybe what I would suggest, is that we simply request that the mayor slow down this process for a short while, and if possible, ask her to cancel the auction right now and say that she will be announcing a date at which the property will either be auctioned or put up for an RFP. Now, the really wonderful thing about an RFP, and Wendell just went through this a couple of weeks ago, towns do this all the time. What you do is you propose that people come in and offer money on an RFP that says that some of the conditions attached to the land will be, for instance, a trail easement. Most trail easements and land would like to have a small parking area, but you sort of have to think about going forward in the future in case it becomes, popular. That sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't, but it's worth at least anticipating. But you can put that in the RFP and then say, we are open to anybody that wants to buy it. And the RFP process allows that to occur. It's a totally legitimate process. So I think that the 13 acres is totally possible become a property of the town of Greenfield, and this is the lingo, where the custody and control of the property passes to the Conservation Commission. And that requires a 2/3 vote of the city council. Once that happens, you then want to record that vote in the registry of deeds, which makes that, at least under Article 97 of the Massachusetts Constitution, kind of permanent. It would take an act of the legislature and an act of Greenfield to change that status. The 6 acres I'm a little confused about, because the maps seem to show to me that there's a building on it. Is that true?
Yes.
That is correct.
Okay. And so I'm wondering whether the reason we need a little time is there a way that this land could be put into an RFP where we say, well, we would like the person doing the RFP to survey 3 of the 6 acres out and surround the house with land, and Greenfield gets the rest. So I'm just saying, I don't know enough about the land. I've just learned about it. I've been trying to figure it out. I don't know if you're aware that the Connecticut River Watershed Council, which is now the Conservancy, did a deal with the predecessors of Woodbridge, and they got 30.8 acres in 1971 to protect the river. And that's all part of this land as well. There's also some weird and squirrely references to what seems like there's surveys that have not been recorded, which would take some research to try and figure it out. But maybe we can get our hands on those and give us a better idea of what's happening on the ground. But my instinct is that there is a sort of undertow of a desire by officials in Greenfield to try and raise some money here. And I get that. But the fact of the matter is that the 13 acres is so obviously a conservation parcel that I can't imagine that Greenfield would want to sort of mess up that parcel of land and say no to a vote. If you propose to the city council, with the mayor's support, that you want them to transfer custody and control from the treasurer to the Conservation Commission of Greenfield, and a 2/3 vote happens, and you record that vote, you're done. You don't have to put up any money. This whole thing about, I mean, where other than fundraising does the Concom come up with money but from the taxpayers? So it's one pocket or another here. It's sort of a little bit mysterious to me. As for the 6 acres, I think it sounds, from reading all the newspaper articles and making a few phone calls and researching it in the registry of deeds, it seems like we just need a little bit more time than October 13th to figure out what we're doing with the 6 acres. So that would be my request. Now, I don't know Roxanne that well, or the mayor. I've met her a few times. I was involved with her when she was on the planning board and the special permits were being issued for the transit center, because I was on the county commission at the time and was involved with that process. I'd be glad to try and sit down with her and try and sort this out, if it would help you. But, I'm not looking to get paid. I've done this for, so many years. I'm retired. I'm happy to throw my hat in the ring. You guys are in charge. I think I get it. And so I'm suggesting that those would be 2 steps.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for all that. Fletcher, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, despite you doing your research independently, Sam, and thanks for being here again, by the way. Despite you doing your research independently, you sort of came up with sort of our ideal scenario as the course of action, which is awesome. In regards to your question for Singer and the treasurer having control, we were sort of assuming that was going to just be the way it was, and we're hoping to sort of, that's what we're asking the mayor is for her to transfer, to be willing to transfer that away. And then as far as the 6 acre parcel, it's great to hear that an RFP process would be feasible, it seems, and we would love to see at the very least a trail easement on that. So it's great to hear from you that that's a possibility as well.
It happens all the time. It's a really common process. It's a way for the town to be upfront and say, this is what we're trying to do. Wendell's done several of them. They have done several of them because they're involved with trying to protect historic buildings. And in that case, a lot of the RFP restrictions are related to you're not taking down the building, sort of, there's certain things that you have to do to protect the building itself. But you can put almost anything in an RFP which is legitimate. And legitimate is reasonably broad. But in this case, it seems pretty simple. And you could actually require the person who's buying the house or buying the 6 acres, if you want to sell all 6 acres, that's, I'm saying up in the air and maybe need some thinking. You've got to be able to have some sense of where the trails are, because I've just seen too many times that the trails kind of get extinguished. And I could show you a beautiful one here in Montague it's very extinguished. And I can show you all the deed language that says that it's right there, but I dare you to find it. So there are a few things that can be done. But it's not that difficult. You don't have to survey it. You can take a map and, you can attach it to the RFP. The RFP itself is recorded. So, all of this stuff is sort of disclosable. So I don't think you're really, doing anything odd. The only reason I wanted to talk to David Singer, I have to admit to you that I changed his name about 35 years ago because he was always too serious for me to take. And so I changed his name to David Swinger. And a lot of lawyers that know him would start laughing and say, Swinger, how you doing? But he knows a lot about this stuff. And it is really unclear, in my opinion, exactly who is doing what between the mayor and the treasurer. Because the language of Article 6, Section 6.3 about the Department of Municipal Finance is that it seems it's sort of saying you do have a treasurer, but it's appointed by the mayor. So is the treasurer standalone once it's appointed by the mayor? Because that would sort of hopefully be my sense of it. But I don't know. And I don't know what the practice in Greenfield has been, which I think is really crucial in order for you guys to sort that question out.
Yeah, got it.
So I just thought Dave might be helpful.
I just had 2 quick questions. One was you mentioned the vote to transfer the property to the care of the Conservation Commission through City Council.
Yep.
And that would be really straightforward,
Yep.
which makes sense, and that it would have a protection under Article 97 just via that process of being under the Conservation Commission. But my question was just what type of, I guess, additional steps would be added, if not just this step of having someone add deed language in the deed that describes some of the conservation values and purposes and access. Would that, number one, protect it in any additional significant way? And number two, is that just simply getting an attorney such as yourself to add the language? Or is there sort of more in between steps there?
That's a really good question. And I don't necessarily believe that you need language in the deed, because if it's transferred to the custody and control of the Concom can vote its own rules and regulation about how that property is to be managed, because it is in your custody and control and no one else's. The mayor can't tell you that they want to put a parking lot there. The reason you want the 2/3 vote is that that's Article 97 for the folks there. Maybe people haven't heard it, but anyway, it's a part of the Constitution of Massachusetts passed during early Earth days. It basically gives the environment some protection. A 2/3 vote basically says that it is preserved for all kinds of purposes, and probably the best place to put this in would be attached to the vote. That the reason the the city council is voting blah, 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 is because of a list of whatever you want to call them, a list of stipulations to how the property would be used. The Concom might also have in its own rules and regs something about managing properties. Since you haven't done it since '98, this is really one of those awful situations where Concoms collect land and then don't have any idea, sort of, oh dear, I didn't know we had these 20 parcels, and they're not really actively managing it. So I don't think it necessarily has to be done that way. Now, the word transfer, too many people get confused about what a transfer, a sale, or this or that. Transfer is a really good word because what you're doing is transferring the custody and control in Greenfield from this amorphous thing, the city of Greenfield, sort of with the custody of the treasurer, to the custody of the Concom. So it is a transfer, pure and simple.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add is that I read that the city cannot issue a deed to itself, and that's why you need to record the language of the vote, because they can't create a deed saying that the city of Greenfield deeds this to the Conservation Commission. It would be the same deed. You would just need to attach that language of the vote. Is that your understanding?
That's correct. It's a simple thing. You can, depends on how the city likes to do it. Some towns like to do affidavits. Some towns just record the vote, and in the vote you reference the book and page of the land from the taking. That's all doable. Yeah, that's true. You can't transfer something to yourself.
Got it. Thank you.
I have
Your municipality.
I have one further question. When you were, we were talking about RFPs, and the response that I got from the attorney said that the other option to sell it would be Chapter 30, Section 16. Is that the RFP process in that chapter?
There are several,
Okay.
so I can't refer to that single one. The attorney that answered you is truly focused on tax taking.
Yes.
And I've known that law firm for a long time, and because I've done a lot of this, and they're involved with many towns doing this kind of thing. They're involved with Berniston and Conway and things that I'm involved with at this very moment. So I can see that they're they're very formal, and they're not going to step into this little place. They're just going to sit tight. But the RFP is really common. I could get you copies of RFPs from all manner of places.
Great. I just have one more question. The fact that the property is both parcels are essentially covered in priority habitat as designated by NHESP, and that the process to do anything beyond some very simple personal cutting of trees or a few allowed uses is a permitting process, like a MISA permitting process. And I was curious if you were familiar with that. Like, I haven't seen that process occur, and I don't know if you have a sense of, let's say a developer is very good at sort of describing the prerequisite steps they'd take to not impact the resources. Is there like hope for much development on the property in your opinion generally, or
Negative.
is that a pretty good?
Well, no, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm done. Yeah, I was just curious.
I would just, number one, I'd have it in the RFP, real clear, because the RFP is recorded.
Yeah.
Then I hate to tell you this, I'm trying not to take a lot of your time. There is a tendency on the part of all state agencies, and National Heritage is the same as DEP and all the rest of them. They really bend over backwards to allow certain things to occur in a single family residence.
Got it.
I mean, I could tell you a horrible story about Dukakis, but anyway, when the Wetlands Act was written, he basically said to the developers, "We're going to pass the Wetlands Act, and then in a second breath, he said, and you guys are writing the regulations. And the biggest regulation loophole that was written in 1972 said single family houses have no limit on the amount of wetlands that you can destroy. Anyway, that law has changed since then, but I'm just telling you, that's the history. So natural heritage is not going to mess with the house.
Yeah.
The farther away you get from the house, the more you need, effective argument. And again, I think you can do this in the RFP. I would love to go there with one or more of you folks so that I can see it. But I got to, just from looking at maps and everything, I got a sort of a sense of it. It's sort of a tangle of trails. And, I thought it was really funny. The Watershed Council was involved with it. But this all comes down to the RFP.
Mhm.
And the town, I think that, and the city can actually generate some income from the RFP. And the city can get what you want, which is the protection of the trail network. And maybe one of the trails are useless. You can decide that. But, I'm guessing that the trails are there for a substantive purpose.
Mhm.
I did this very project in Holyoke, which you can't imagine how difficult it is working in Holyoke. And I ended up getting about a 40-acre parcel of land that goes right up to the top of Mount Tom. And the trail, this is crazy, the trail went all the way along the bottom along the road and then vertically rose all the way to the crest, went totally along the crest, and dropped back down to the road. And one of the arguments I had to deal with was people saying, oh, I've never walked that trail. It's sort of like, I want a different trail. And so that's not the issue here. And that's why the RFP is a wonderful process to avoid that.
Got it.
So I guess I would just throw out, I don't know how I can help you more. I've done this a lot. I'd be glad to meet with the mayor or whoever is working with the mayor. I talked to the mayor's assistant on the phone, Caitlin, I think her name was.
Yeah.
And she was very aware of it, and that's her job. And I'd be glad to get together with you and go for a walk. I'd be glad to do whatever we need to do. But I think you have a perfect right to ask the city council, the 2/3 vote, to turn the property over to the Concom for custody and control. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to put up any money. All this money talk, I fear that there is a need for money. And I've run into this every time.
I have a question. Sam, I did look up in our rules and regulations what it stipulates about conservation land, and it's a very short article.
Probably quite old.
Sorry?
Probably quite old.
Probably. Let's see.
I think it was last updated 2002.
Actually revised December 10th, 2014. So not that old.
Oh, okay, good. Okay.
And the article says the Conservation Commission shall keep a list of all the land it is responsible for by map, parcel, and acreage. Separate bank accounts will be kept for each address. Those funds will be used for passive recreation purposes. The Conservation Commission shall set rules and regulations for the use of conservation land under its jurisdiction, can amend these rules and regulations by a majority vote of the Conservation Commission. So my question here is, the use of the word will be kept for each address. We're very familiar with shall and may, being that when it says that separate bank accounts will be kept for each address, my question was, so some of the conservation land that we have in town has funds associated with it, and that's or what makes up this trust, and then we use those funds for that particular parcel and it's separated out. Do we need to have a fund associated with this when we go to city council? If we decide to go to city council, do we need to like show or prove in some way that we have the means to have an account associated with this property for its maintenance?
Okay, I think, and this is really common, really, really common. It's just inartful that Will showed up. Will kind of smells like Chow. No. So you can have people push me, pull you with the word. I think the trick here is that if it seems like the public is very interested in this project, and I don't think that you would have a hard time raising a little money to create a fund for this property. The trouble is that the accountant is probably not going to be a happy camper because, you know, they're going to have like $9,000 in and 14 properties. And what does this all mean? So all the land trusts go through this every year because the federal government changed the tax law about 10 years ago, which basically said if a land trust does not monitor their property and record it and document it every year, then the money that was raised in tax-exempt donations can be questioned. You're in a slightly different position, but I think the same idea probably should apply. And that is that, and I think you can tell the city council this, that, my golly, you guys are new. The Concom has been here for a long time. You guys are just getting your arms around it. I mean, look what we're doing, scrambling, trying to figure out what to do with this project. And so we want to go back and look at all our properties and see that all of them are not only got a little fund to pay for the monitoring, but that they're actually being monitored. Now, my experience is that Concoms are like wonderful volunteers. And maybe you guys are wonderful volunteers right now because you don't have 1,000 acres and 45 properties that you got to go monitor. But Land Trust, you know, Franklin Land Trust has, you know, probably 5,000 or 10,000 acres that they have to monitor. So I'm just suggesting to you that you could tell a Concom, you could tell the city council that as a part of this process, you realize that you have properties and you have regulations that say you should be monitoring, and you're going to set up a program to try and figure out how to do that with or without finances, with volunteers or otherwise. And that's a project that you're going to engage in going forward.
May I speak to this in relation to the 13 acres?
Sure, anybody.
Sam, I'm Stephen Woodbridge, the most recent private owner of these parcels.
Oh, cool. Yep.
The recreation department is already in the habit of maintaining these trails. They come through, you know, a couple of times a year, and if there's a storm, they come through again. And even private individuals sometimes come to do it. Nobody has recognized any of this as being private property because I never said, you know, private property begins here, please come sue me. So that there is virtually no maintenance to be done that isn't already being accounted for by the recreation department on these parcels. I'm the 13-acre parcel. That's all.
Well, I would just suggest that the treasurer is or is not aware that that is occurring. I think it's a wonderful thing. I don't know how they got that assignment, but that's a wonderful thing. And the Concom could set up a relationship with the rec department and DPW, whatever, to have a maybe more formalized little thing that would make the city council happy. But you know, that's good news. I think that's a wonderful thing. I voluntarily take care of several trails in Montague and Leverett. Just, you know, I go hiking, I clean it up while I'm gone.
Rachel, I just wanted to add that since those, I believe we could vote to change that language, right? So that we wouldn't need to create an account. And I guess my thinking is that you know, in the past I've read that the Conservation Commission has gone to City Council to ask for, you know, funds to be added yearly into the conservation fund. And it hasn't really happened. And that conservation fund, you know, we could use that for any property. It wouldn't, I don't, it's not tied to any one specific property. So, I mean, to me, it seems like it's uh, simpler and more flexible to have the money in a conservation fund that could be used for any property rather than to have, you know, a $500 fund for each property. You know, like if we're splitting it out among all the properties, that's just one thing
So,
that.
yeah, I was referring to the Tap and Die conservation account, the Griswold conservation
Yeah.
account, and the Burlington Road conservation area account, which
Yeah.
were not included in the trust summary that you just showed us per email. So
Yeah, I think those
there
are
are
those.
like 8, 9. I mean, that's almost $10,000 in those 3 accounts that are separate from the $4,000 that the accountant, I believe,
Yeah,
sent you.
yeah, I think those are separate, and I think at least with the Greenfield, like the Griswold, Greenfield Tap and Die, I think that one's because we get income from the forestry that happens there. So to me it makes sense, you know, if a property is generating income, I think it makes sense to have a fund so that that income stays with that property. But I think a lot of our properties, we're not making any money on any of them. So
Since
to
we can
me it
use
doesn't.
general funds for anything.
Yes, and yeah, if
we
we could use the trust. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
And I think
No,
this
that's what I was going to say.
gives you an opening. I think this gives you an opening to say to the city council that several little issues have come up with regard to conservation properties. And now that you're getting your arms around these funds and the need to monitor and et cetera, that you plan to figure this out and go forward. I don't think you have to go to we need a fund to manage the 13-acre property. We need a fund to manage the trails on the 6-acre property, but we will propose internally to the Concom and perhaps just simply inform the city council mayor that this is what you've, you know, come up with, and they can throw their 2 cents in. I did want to throw in one thing that came up about liability.
That was going to be my question. Thank you.
If the city council has a 2/3 vote and this land lands under Article 97, I can't remember what it is, 21C, I think, that liability applies to Greenfield. And my favorite case on this one is that a young man was riding a bicycle in a park in Boston, and there were these stanchions that had lights in them, and one of the lights was out. And the guy hit the stanchion with his bicycle, and he sued. And he lost because they came up with evidence that he had ridden there before. And so I'm just saying this liability protection is very broad. They don't want you to set up, you know, a hole in the ground so that they break their neck. But other than that, you sort of take your chances, if you want to call it that, when you're using Article 97 land, because the idea is that the state and the public and everybody got together to protect this land. And the last thing we're going to do is now put up rails and guardrails and, you know, steps, and, you know, that's not the point. So the liability law applies particularly under Article 97 land.
Okay.
So it sounds like the main decision that we would have to make as a commission is whether to decide to move forward asking the 13-acre parcel to be transferred to us by a vote of city council, or try to keep the two parcels together by requesting the mayor to cancel the auction or delay it until we're able to put together an RFP that goes out for the two parcels together. Who would be responsible for generating the RFP? Who would be responsible for making the decisions about what kind of restrictions would go into that RFP and making sure it's properly worded and all of that?
Okay, I got to take this a little bit step by step. There are two parcels that were initially going to get auctioned.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys have broken these into two separate ideas. And if I was trying to sort out how the Concom could proceed, and I don't know exactly what your agenda says, whether you can actually propose a motion and vote on it tonight, or whether you have to do it at another meeting, but whatever. I would suggest that you vote to ask the chair or whoever else, and I'd be glad to join in, to have a meeting with the mayor and with the idea that the 13 acres is going to not be sold, but the custody and control of it is going to be transferred to the Concom of Greenfield. And that the 6-acre parcel that there not be an auction, but rather that an RFP be proposed, and that you would work with the mayor and her staff with the language on the RFP. It's really common language. I mean, you say RFP, town council is going to send you 100 of them. I can get you 10 from Wendell alone. I mean, this is, there's all the boilerplate, and then this is what we want to do.
I'm not doing it. Could you actually send us some examples that might be helpful in discussing this with the mayor?
Sure, I can get some citations. Yeah, the thing is that when it comes to real estate, these RFPs are recorded.
Yeah.
So I mean, and they're long. They're 20 or 30 pages, and 2/3 of it is boilerplate.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to run the RFP by. I can't remember the name of the agency in Boston right now, but there's a review process by the people that oversee bidding, because RFPs are basically bids.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay. I have other questions about RFPs, but I don't know if you're the right person to ask them.
Well, I mean, this is your meeting. I said I would attend to try and help as best I could. Wendell is a great example. Wendell, did a tax taking on a house that was the oldest house in Wendell. It's over 250 years old. It was crumbling. But the thing is that when you went there, you realized all the beams, rafters, sills, everything, and the windows, interestingly enough, were all chestnut. They were all solid as a rock. And then there was a wonderful little attachment, which was also really old with chestnut beams. And then a really disgusting addition that was added like 50 years ago. And it's like 2x4s. And so what they did was describe what they wanted to happen to the property. And they said that they had to repair and improve and fix the two old buildings. They're identified. And there would be no further development, meaning no more houses on the property, and that it would be used for agriculture. And it was a fairly substantial piece of property. I think it was 15 or 20 acres. And the people built a yurt for a year, fixed up the house, and then they took down the yurt. And now it's a great project. But the idea is that you basically say, this is for sale or auction, whatever you want to call it. Everybody has to send in their bid on the RFP. and they say, I will abide by this, 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 and this, and they have to put up a little bit of money, you know, it's $500,000, just, you know, good faith money. And then the selectmen review it, or whoever, you know, is designated reviews it. And that is what controls.
I just want to explicitly agree with the sort of scenario that you laid out of the RFP being used only really as a strategy for the 6-acre parcel.
Yep.
And ideally, the 13 acres comes under our care. Just to be clear, because we talked about a few different things. And then if you have time, Sam, I just wanted to throw something up real quick. We talked about not deeding, you know, a grantor can't grant to itself, but I have a deed here from the city of Gardner where they deeded a piece of land to themselves. The only difference was it was under the care of the Conservation Commission. And then they wrote in additional language, which is kind of where I got that idea. And I was just curious if it looked kind of legitimate to you, I guess, and if I guess, or maybe it doesn't matter. I don't want to get really into that if we don't need to. But if you're pretty confident that it wouldn't really offer much past, just because we're recording the vote anyway, and we'll have stipulations with the vote.
I think you put the stipulations in the vote,
Okay.
number one, and it's recorded.
Okay.
Number two, the law is a squirrely thing. I mean, I'm just sitting here. I went to law school. I've been doing this for 35 years. I went a little late, but anyway, that's the way that goes. The fact of the matter is that someone put some language in there.
Yep.
The question is, did someone follow it? And what are the enforcement mechanisms that once you wrote it in there, did something happen? And the fact of the matter is that in a lot of situations, everybody ignores it. And in a lot of situations, it becomes, you know, like the Bible. So, you know, I believe the language has to be really correct, and that the process that got you there, like the city council vote and the recording, that's really key. And then enforcement is really key. But the Concom has a ton of enforcement. You know, your statute protects you a whole lot, as long as you know the powers that be in the city love you. I mean, because there are Concoms that get stomped on, you know, by the selectmen who say, I don't want to hear it. But you know, I don't think Franklin County is one of those areas.
Got it. Okay.
So I had some questions about the city council process, but I'm not sure. It looks like maybe Phil Elmer isn't on anymore.
He had to jump off.
So for the stipulations, I assume we should write what we think those stipulations should be and send those to city council. And the mayor need to approve that before it gets sent to city council, or can we send that to city council to go on their agenda?
Okay, here I'm used to smaller towns, and Greenfield is a squirrely guy only because Greenfield went through a horrible set of changes in their town starting in the early 70s, where they had an open town meeting, an elected town meeting, and then a 50-person, you know, or 100-person town meeting, and then a 40-person town meeting. And then they finally decided to call it a city council, and it had, you know, 20 people on it, and now you're down to 15 or whatever. I mean, it's evolved. So Greenfield is just a funny kind of, you know, thing here. Whereas the law for all the other towns in Franklin County is there's a treasurer, they're custody and control. It's that simple. There's no mayor. I don't know how the process works, and I think probably Caitlin would be the person to talk to, and I'd be glad to go to a meeting and sort of try and figure this out. But you know, I don't know how you propose and create an agenda item that then becomes something that's voted on by the city council. And I don't know whether, you know, the mayor goes first, or the mayor says, I love it, and then it's proposed to the city council, and then the mayor has to sign off on it afterwards. I mean, that's a process I'm just not aware of, but I don't think it's a big deal.
Yeah, I think the main thing is that we just need the mayor to approve, and then we can figure out, you know, how that process works, you know.
Well, there's probably a committee of the city council that has to review this as well.
Yeah.
So this isn't,
Mhm.
but that's why I was suggesting that you split the two parcels in a decision tonight in terms of their, their conceptual, they're out there being looked at, and then say that we're looking to do a custody and control transfer under Article 97 by the city council of the 13 acres to preserve those trails and that land. And on a 6-acre parcel, you're interested in trying to protect the trails, but you think that perhaps an RFP might be the way to proceed where the trails are protected, but the land can be sold. Because the law is really tricky when the municipality tries to put restrictions on something being auctioned. Because the moment that land is seized from the owner by land court, that's what the town gets. The town doesn't get to then say, oh, and you can build a high rise in the far corner. I mean, you have what you took. It's that simple. So those kinds of restrictions, I think, are tricky, and that's why the RFP process is almost invariably used. And it works very well. Again, like I said, it's recorded. So you've got an enforcement mechanism that's really tasty because you can go to the registry and say, look.
But the RFP process only ensures that the person that buys the property through the RFP process needs to follow what's outlined in the RFP. So it doesn't, for example, doesn't put any restrictions in perpetuity. If those people then go and sell their land, they would sell it assuming, through a realtor, and those requests that were included in the RFP wouldn't necessarily pass on to future owners. Is that correct?
No, I think if it's recorded and you say in the RFP that these restrictions are permanent, then they're permanent.
Okay.
On the other hand, I'll say something else, and that is nothing's permanent. So every time I did an Article 97 project, I did one in Southwick, 10 acres of the most landlocked land you ever saw, completely surrounded by fish and game land, 700 acres of stripped, planted bird habitat. And in the middle of it is 10 acres of trees, owned by Southwick. And at the town meeting, someone stood up and said, I don't want birds on Southwick's land. Meanwhile, I'm kind of like, well, if you sell it, then it's not Southwick land. And why do you care? And they thought it was worth more without birds. And I was like, whoa, wait a second. But the fact of the matter is, once it's recorded and once it's stated that this is your purpose, then that's the end of it. There's not an argument. So I don't care what the real estate agent says. The owner is going to get title, and the title is going to say, you can't do this, this, this. And you can put enforcement mechanisms in it. You can say the building inspector has it, the Concom has it, which is not a bad idea. You could put more than one party in as enforcement mechanisms.
So, Rachel, sorry, am I interrupting another question yet? Or so, Sam, my assumption with the RFP was that it was going to stipulate certain methods of conservation, and I assumed that, like, if we did it for the 6-acre parcel, that it would stipulate in the RFP that the next buyer needs to work with like a conservation organization to put a conservation restriction on the property that does these things. And it sounds like maybe that's not necessary. Okay. All right. It sounds like that's not necessary, but
if you define the purpose of this RFP as to put, a single family dwelling on the market and help the housing problem in Greenfield, you can also say, and also we are permanently protecting these properties, and all manner of ways can be made to do that. You could actually have the city council vote to put a Article 97 overlay on the map that shows the path, the trails, and say, that's it. They're permanently preserved as indicated on the map.
Got it. So that kind of answers my question about trail easement separately, it could kind of be accomplished that way.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So this has been a long meeting. I'm really sorry that I've taken so much of your time. Someone ought to get in touch with me, Travis or all of you or whatever you want to do. I can send my email. Travis got on my email. I'd be glad to go to a meeting. Caitlin probably say, "Oh my God, here they are," because I told her that I was throwing my hat in the ring, and she said, "Oh, let me get you in touch with Travis," and that's how I sort of arrived.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add is that, I mean, it's my understanding that the Conservation Commission like needs approval to be represented by a like outside legal counsel. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm not.
Volunteer.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is I didn't know how that would work.
Well,
legally.
someone can raise that flag. Like I said, you can write
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff in the law. It's either enforced or not enforced. I'm saying that I am willing to volunteer for no money because I've been trying to protect the banks of the Connecticut River since I moved here.
Mhm.
And I started hunting here in 1956. I moved to Montague in 1967. So the Connecticut River is something that I've been very interested in. And so that to me is the reason to volunteer, if nothing else. I didn't care what the entanglement was. And if people feel that I'm representing the Concom, I'm sort of representing land, bizarrely enough. I'm representing an idea. If people don't like that, then, someone can approve that I work with the Concom and the town of Greenfield for no money. And, and I'll swear that I won't charge.
Okay. Just thought I'd bring that up so before we get entangled in anything.
I was a selectman. I know what it's like. You can have people go off the reservation and the bills start coming in and say, how did this ever happen? So no, I understand. And I'm very aware of that problem. And also, I think there's really easy ways to finesse it.
Okay.
So it's nice meeting on you.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
And you have a wonderful meeting, and I would just again reference the idea that you'd like to have a meeting with the mayor, and you're dividing the two parcels, and one you would like to permanently preserve, and you're making investigations on exactly how specifically to do that, but you think that it can be done by a vote of city council, but you need a little time. And on the other guy, it is true that auctions are advertised and withdrawn. I mean, this happens all the time. Montague about 10 years ago tried to sell this building in Turner's Falls, one of the old paper mills, and everybody realized, are we really doing that? And they were like, we can't do this. It took a little while to sink in. All you have to do is advertise, provide notice to the places where the auction was announced and say, we're not doing this.
Yeah, and they've already postponed it, and they've already reposted that, that auction was postponed. So I think they know the process for doing that.
Well, I'm saying is that the process could be slowed down some more so we can do an RFP. Anyway.
Yeah.
And again, there's so many little steppies. I don't know which committee of the city council has to look at RFPs, and the mayor's office, and the conservation project, and which committees, and and that's again why I thought David Swinger might be able to help me so that we didn't have to bother the mayor. But if they want to come up with a half hour, an hour, or whatever they have to do, I'll come over to Greenfield and meet with Caitlin and whoever. I don't care. Give me a shout.
Great.
I love doing this.
Okay.
Particularly when it works.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
I do want to tell you that my brother-in-law and sister owned a piece of land over on the Green River, and they ran into financial problems, and I ended up having to subdivide the property. I took 5 or 6 acres in the back It was on the Green River, and subdivided it out and went to the city council. At that time was tiny. It was sort of like just starting to get its legs, and that was permanently preserved as a part of a little project. Very simple. Everybody in Greenfield thought it was wonderful. And then a couple of years later, a real estate agent showed up and tried to persuade Greenfield to reverse the 2/3 vote so that he could add it to his house backyard. And I did write a rather zinging letter to the mayor of the time saying that I really hope I didn't have to see Greenfield in court because this was a dead loser, which I put in capital letters. And I got a call an hour later after it was delivered saying, "Don't worry."
I actually,
Anyway, so
until you started telling that story, when you started saying that, I thought, oh yeah, we have a conservation land called Lovejoy Land. I think that's what the land
well, it's
is.
Hallowell. Well, Hallowell, Lovejoy, yeah.
That's we have like names for all the conservation land, and one of them is called the Lovejoy property. So
okay, it's behind the ball fields.
Yeah,
it's behind the ball fields on off Leiden Road.
okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, I can send my phone number or whatever. Don't be afraid to yell, Travis.
Okay.
Give everybody my email. Don't worry about it. I'll talk to anybody anytime if I'm around.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. Have a wonderful meeting.
All right. Thanks.
I just wanted to point out
Yes.
that the next city council meeting is scheduled for October 20th.
Yeah, I think if any of this is going to happen, the mayor's going to have to withdraw the property before the auction. I mean, there just
The
isn't
auction is
time to
scheduled
do
for the
anything else.
13th.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should we take time to kind of establish that the thrust of our next ask or move or whatever?
Yeah.
Before we do though, I just want to say, as far as I'm definitely noticing this generating steam with sort of starting to happen organically through different people, and there's a Bicycle World does like group rides, somewhat regularly, and tonight their ride is, they've been posting this stuff on Facebook, like the situation. And tonight their ride is like a multi-group ride from other groups in the area, and it's all for like supporting the trails, and you know what I mean. So they're so there's some.
They're riding on these 13-acre parcels.
maybe I
13-acre
can't confirm or deny that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think pretty much all public support that we've seen, all public interest that we've seen has been supportive of protecting these properties. So,
Well, it seems like so the city council meeting is after the scheduled auction, but I think it would be worthwhile Mayor.
Sorry, Rachel, you cut out there for a second. After worthwhile, I'm not sure what you said.
Oh, scheduling a meeting with the mayor to discuss what she indicated in our last meeting that she would consider a conservation acre parcel. She was really clear about that. And so I think that if we were able to meet with her before the 13th and we have the answers from the lawyer, it's very clear that the city can vote and transfer the land to us. And if we can bring some examples of the RFP with us and even have like an idea of what we would want to go in that RFP, then I feel like that there's a really good chance that the outcome of that meeting is that the 13-acre parcel is pulled from the auction and is put on the agenda at if not the October city council meeting, then the following one, if the process is too long for it to be able to go there, to go that quickly, at the minimum. Like I feel like that's that's a no-brainer ask. There's been so much public support. It would be an absolute tragedy, and it just kind of ludicrous for that 13-acre parcel to not be added to the Rocky Mountain Conservation Area as parkland. That's the way that it's been. And that's how people in Greenfield and in all of Franklin County and outside of Franklin County experience it when they come to Greenfield. So I feel really confident in that ask. And with the RFP, I think it's a little bit more complicated because there is this house on it. The house is not a tear down right now, and it's fixable, but it's in disrepair. And I think that there is that sense of urgency from the town in terms of, you know, trying to get it back on taxpayers because it is a residency. There's also a sense of urgency in the sense that, you know, that the security of that building. There are other issues, I think, that put time pressure on the sale of that, other than just you know, getting tax revenue on it. The value of it, really, because so much of the value is wrapped into the structure, it really could decrease very quickly. So, and also I think like the power in our ask with an RFP really has to, again, be in what value is this going to add to the property, to have it be as an RFP rather than through the sale at an open auction, because that's where I feel like our sticking point is going to be. If a piece of land sold through an RFP isn't expected to go for as much and as the sale of a property in general auction, I feel like it's going to be a hard sell, particularly because those trails don't have an outlet. So I think like if there was a public road on the other side and it was simply a matter of a walking path, like it would be a really easy case. But because like by putting an easement on those trails, we still have so many other pieces that need to line up in order for that to be a completely protected avenue into the park.
Only one other piece which belongs to the bed and breakfast.
Yeah, and then there's the entrance down on the the trail goes through the old A&W land as well at the very bottom.
Yes.
I just think like there's the kind of a no-brainer with a 13-acre parcel, and I think try and bring the RFP up. I think having examples would be really good, but trying to figure out how like to argue that an RFP that does protect that small section of trail, the ridge trail along the edge of the property, like Fletcher had suggested in the last meeting, like how that would actually add value to the property in its sale.
I think like my understanding is that any additional restrictions, meaning an easement or whatever that we put, or conditions that are put on the property through an RFP would most likely technically lower the value, but that's not to say that the end result would be lower value, in the sense that maybe the RFP process generates additional interest, there's more time, there's more buyers that see the potential of the property. So even though I think potentially there's a technical argument that, you know, oh, you guys want to put a trail easement and conservation conditions on this, well, that's going to lower the value. Well, you know, maybe not. Maybe there's some part of the process that, again, generates more interest in the property. And just one other thing is that I think it's worth approaching the other landowners with the rest of the trail to ask them about their willingness to look at an easement so that it could be complete, which would give us a little more, like you said, a little more leverage, I think.
Oh, that's interesting. So if we were able to, I mean, the timeline for that would be if we were able to have the other degree before, then it would be more powerful, because then you'd be like, oh, this is the missing gap. But that puts a time crunch on that for sure.
Yeah, I think that would be.
Fletcher, I don't know if you have a way, like, what I understood from Sam was that he was willing to provide us with some examples of RFPs as they had been written and advertised. If it's true that that parcels purchased through an RFP process have generated larger support or higher prices than on average through public auction, that would be an extremely powerful thing for us to bring to the mayor.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true. I don't know how many, I mean, there were a lot of people that attended the open house that I went to for this particular property, and the auction owner said that they had many more people than usually come to the open house. I assume that's partly because of the publicity that we brought to it.
Yeah. I think so.
But, you know, I know that, like, is there any way of knowing, like, is that, where is an RFP process advertised, and people who are used to looking for houses on auctions see it on an RFP? What's the you know, the avenue that an average homeowner or somebody who is looking to fix up an old house in Greenfield and live in it would see a property advertised through an RFP? I just don't know these things, so I don't know how to make that argument.
I think they can put it forward in the same way they put forward the auction, although I don't know what role the auctioneer plays in additional advertisement. But yeah, those are good questions, and I was wondering the same. And I can try to think of, I don't have anybody off the top of my head, but I can try to think of people that may have dealt with this other than Sam, to kind of give an opinion on if they've seen such a thing. But yeah, so two questions, one being, have you ever seen an RFP process sort of like give time for additional interest and generate a price that was potentially more than what would have been at auction? And then also, you know, what are the ways that an RFP can be put forward? Because I know that I think the town can definitely put it forward on their website, but then it goes to the state, like Sam said, for a process, some part of the process, I believe. I don't know if it's through mass bids or forgetting the name of that website, but there's a website where Massachusetts takes bids. But yeah, I'll look into that a bit.
Yeah, and I just wanted to point out that the attorney's responses to me, you know, she specified the, you know, it could be sold by auction or that chapter 30B section 16. And I looked up I was just trying to Google like RFPs for selling land by towns, and they mentioned that chapter 30B section 16. So I think, you know, the attorney that we asked has told us that that is an option, you know, the mayor's tax title attorney. So I think if we do talk to the mayor, I think it'll be important to specifically reference all of the responses from the tax title attorney that, you know, because it seems the mayor, you know, is already in contact with this attorney anyway. So the fact that we have these responses that back up point for point what we want to do, I think that would be helpful. So, I mean, I definitely think it sounds like a good idea to set up a meeting with the mayor. I'm not sure if we want to try to get as many commissioners there as possible, or yeah, does anyone have any thoughts on that potential meeting?
Yeah, I agree. Power in numbers. I mean, I think that if it's less than just the 5 of us or 6 of us, you know, not a group of people from the public, I don't want to make her feel anxious in any way or pressured in any way. I'd like it to be sort of informal with just the commission and her, if possible. Personally, that's my thoughts.
I think that makes sense.
Can we do that for open law?
That's a good
Maybe.
question.
There was something in an email or somewhere recently that suggested we had to do it individually as citizens, as non-commissioners, but I don't. That might have been
No,
for a certain
I think that was just
context.
if you're making a public statement anywhere,
Oh, I see. Okay.
and if you have to make sure that you're not, you clarify that you're not making a statement on behalf of the commission when you speak. But I don't know if there's anything that would prevent the commission, which is the city department, from meeting with the mayor. But I don't know that. I guess that would be something that would be good to clarify.
Do you all think that having Sam with us would be better? Or yeah, I think it probably would be, but I'm open to other thoughts.
I mean, the other option would be that we could hold yet another special meeting when the mayor would be available to attend our meeting. That's another option.
Would it make sense to maybe provide her with kind of an outline of what we hope to address in this meeting so she can be prepared for what we're going to discuss and not just sort of hem and haw, so she's going to get back to us with more answers, but she'll actually have clear idea of what we're asking so we can actually discuss solutions right then and there?
Well,
Yeah.
if you know, an open meeting like that, is she going to feel more on the spot? Whereas if we had a private meeting, she might be a little bit more willing to discuss things instead of feeling like everybody's sort of going at her and she's on the defensive kind of.
Yeah, I don't. I don't know. I think it could work either way, but I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to a private meeting. But either way, yeah, I think, Kristen, I agree that we should provide some level of like an agenda or specific questions or things that we wanted to talk about. I don't know if it would pay to get into like the finest detail, just in the sense of, I don't know. I just, if there's if there's a desire in the town to push back against specific scenarios and we're going to present those scenarios, they may come better prepared to refute those scenarios if we give them very specific detail. But maybe that's not a concern and we just need to go for it. I don't know.
I think what if, Travis, you contacted the mayor or Caitlin, however that works, and said we would like to either have a meeting with the mayor or schedule a special meeting before the 13th that the mayor is able to attend, is able and willing to attend, to discuss requesting the transfer of, requesting city council to transfer the 13-acre property to custodian of the Conservation Commission. And we could say specifically RFP if that's what we're sure we're going to be asking for, but
first we need to delay the auction, right? I mean, we need to request a delay so that we have more time for that, right?
Well, I guess we could say this is what we want to do, and then here are the steps that need to happen in order to do that. And the first thing would be to withdraw the properties from the auction, you know. So we definitely have to say that. That's for sure.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, but I think, you know, the point that, making the point that the city council, now that she knows that it is, that the process is that the city council needs to transfer this property to our custodian with 2/3 of vote. The city council is not meeting until after the auction. I mean, I feel like the withdrawing from the auction isn't the first ask anymore. Like we asked them to withdraw the properties from the auction in order to come up with other ideas. Now we have other ideas and really pathways, and it requires them to be withdrawn from the auction a second time in order for those to happen. But first and foremost, we we have a clear ask, and it requires them to be the option to be postponed or delayed.
They're still working on it.
Right, so meeting before the 13th, like well before the 13th would be
Yes.
ASAP.
Yeah,
I think
and
it's
if
worth. Oh, go ahead, Travis.
sorry, I was gonna say I can call Caitlin tomorrow, and you know, if we're gonna have a special meeting, are there like specific times that would work for people? Or I mean, I don't want to, like, you know, if we're doing this like later this week or something. Unfortunately, if it's Friday, I don't think I'll be able to make it. But
I don't know if this is too far away, but same time next Tuesday, like I generally don't have anything recurring on Tuesdays because I keep it open for this meeting, which is only every other week. But if it's if that's too far, every Friday is not good. And weekends, definitely the mayor wouldn't be available. So if we scheduled a
well, I will say that I know that
Monday
a city
Tuesday.
councilor was able to meet with the mayor over the weekend before the property was going to be auctioned.
Well,
So
that's good.
I guess it can happen, but it's probably unlikely to happen.
I guess maybe depending on what they say tomorrow, as far as when we could meet, we could figure that out. But I would be able to do next Tuesday for sure. Later in this week, I could do, but sounds like Friday's off the table, maybe. So
I mean, you guys can meet without
Thursday.
me, but
I think we should keep it for everybody together as much as possible.
Generally better for everybody. If we could do like tomorrow or Thursday or Monday, can we at least kind of get like a time of day so that we can just jump on an appointment if we can get it? Or mornings
Yeah.
better?
Are we ready to meet with her tomorrow morning? I mean, I suppose there's no reason why we couldn't like schedule a follow-up meeting to discuss XP or things for the 6-acre later. I just don't. Would we be ready tomorrow morning to really confidently discuss what we would in terms of an RFP for the 6-acre parcel? I'd like to see examples from Sam. I don't. Yeah, that's the part that I'm less clear about. The request for the 13-acre parcel. I'm very clear about what the request is there.
My thought, without us having talked about it, was just that we were going to leave the RFP thing as like a suggested strategy from us to the town, and that it, like, the level of detail I pictured was just that, you know, we could achieve conservation scenarios while also allowing you to put it to the public bidding process and still get, you know, a similar amount of money for it. Do you think, Rachel, that we should get those specifics down now, or?
I just don't know enough about it to. I just don't know enough about it to be able to say one way or the other.
Yeah, I guess my thought from what Sam was saying was that we could, you know, we could suggest that the RFP process would be the best option because we can, you know, specify that there are trail easements that would be, you know, permanent on that property. And he specifically said that we could say we would be happy to work with you on the language, you know, going forward as we develop the RFP. So I guess I feel like I wouldn't necessarily need to have the language now.
And I guess I feel like as long as we had an example, like I thought that the example from Wendell was great. So if I would say there's if he already said he was willing to share those examples with us. So if we could at least have an example before the meeting, then I think that would be enough.
Yeah.
It sounds also like the town could potentially stipulate things that they are uniquely interested in, whether it be septic repair or something as a duty of the next owner. Not that they wouldn't have to do that under the laws anyway.
That's a given. They under
Yeah.
Title V have any way out of the septic.
Right. I just
They're
mean
not-
like around that kind of thing. Maybe I can't think of another like obviously advantageous thing that they would stipulate, but you know, the fact that they can make stipulations that maybe aren't even related to some of our conservation desires are pretty good. I don't know.
like historical ones potentially.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, you can repair the house, but must keep the general historic character or something.
Yeah. So back to the meeting ideas. Just a note that if we're meeting in person with the mayor, Tuesday next week will be the earliest I'll be able to do it because I'm in Ohio right now. So I would not be able to do that. But again, I wouldn't necessarily have to be there if we could get a meeting that quick. And, you know, I think we all seem to agree on what needs to be done. So
I think it's worth you asking.
And couldn't you phone it in from where you are, Travis?
I guess it depends if it's an in-person meeting or if it's a remote meeting like this.
We could phone you into an in-person meeting.
Yeah, carry a tablet with you on it.
You know, there's this old thing called a conference call, Travis.
Yeah.
Like digital screens.
Was that on a pager? Is that how that works?
Dial someone, put it on the table, and then you're in the meeting.
From what I remember, City Hall is one of the places that has the fancy new conference equipment as well, the hybrid stuff. So maybe that could be the way. But I mean, I guess I would. I don't know. I guess it depends on what any potential, you know, catches would be if we waited till Tuesday. I'm not totally sure what that would be, but.
I mean, it seemed like, you know, the mayor made the decision to postpone. Was it the day before or 2 days before the auction? So, I mean, there'd still be plenty of time. Yeah.
Be available anytime on Tuesday, morning, afternoon, or this time of our regular meeting. So I have a lot of flexibility next Tuesday.
I have to play Tuesday by ear because this is so stupid, but I'm getting a new refrigerator on Tuesday and I have no idea when they're coming. So, and I'm the only one home that day. So I can probably come once I get that call from them, but I just don't know when they're coming.
If we are conferencing, maybe you could
add another one.
Refrigerator moving through the background, but
okay. So I guess the plan is I'm gonna call tomorrow and see what we can get, and recommend Tuesday maybe as like what works best for us, but maybe I'll take what I can get. I don't know.
Yeah, Monday or Tuesday, I would be able to show up in person. The rest of this week is a little dubious.
I'm also available Monday, but only in the morning until about 1 o'clock.
I can do Monday and Tuesday, but Tuesday only in the morning or evening. I got something in the middle of the day.
Is someone recording all of this?
I am.
Next week I'm pretty flexible, with the exception of Thursday, and the end of this week would be tough, but I could, if emergency, I could do something there.
Okay. All right. I think we'll be able to get someone to talk to the mayor, and maybe, you know, maybe they will. You know, we had this question about open meeting law. I would think that the mayor's office would know about meeting with commissions and how open meeting law works. So they'll probably be able to advise on that.
And Travis, are you up for reaching out to Sam as well to potentially be part of this, or?
Yeah, do we want Sam a part of this one, or, I mean, we talked about maybe just going ourselves.
Yeah, I don't.
I kind of feel like maybe we should just go ourselves, and we can mention that we've had an attorney reach out to us who does tax property law, or did, and you know gave us advice at our last meeting. I don't know, and he's willing
Sounds like
to
he knows
assist.
Caitlin. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion either way. As long as we came with the right sort of vibe, I don't think it would be a detriment having Sam there. But I also don't think that now is necessarily going to be the time where we really need to talk like specific legal concerns. So in that sense, I could see not. But either way.
I think I'd be afraid of the image of like the conservation coming with an attorney to, put this to the mayor.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
We have time.
Right.
Yeah, for now.
If this gets delayed.
Yeah.
The thing I just wanted to mention is, I think, and if I could potentially do this, but is it worth reaching out to city councilors who have shown their support here in the very near term to just sort of let them know what the latest is as far as what we intend to do, or it just seems like it might sort of,
I would be in favor of reaching out to somebody in the city council to just clarify how things get on the city council agenda, just so that we have that fill in that little piece of understanding.
Phil Elmer, no, not Phil Elmer. John Bottomley was talking to me about, he was saying he wasn't sure like which committee it would need to go through first, and I think if we reached out to the city clerk, that would be the person who would help direct, which way this goes to get onto the city council meeting. And I'll just say that 4 city councilors have reached out to me, so I could respond to them, with an update on.
I think that'd be great.
On what we're doing.
And
and I can. Do you want me to call the clerk or about the procedure?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Kristen, did you have something to add?
no, I was going to bring up the Greenfield group. I'm not sure how involved they are or if they need any updates. I'm not sure if we have anybody from the public who's with them attending tonight's meeting.
I'm here from Greenfield.
Oh, okay.
And can you just state your name?
Jan Mayer.
Hi, Jan. Jan, were you CC'd on the email? I replied to someone from Greenfield recently. I just don't know if it was sort of disseminated.
It was forwarded to me, but I was not on your
original
list. Yeah.
Okay. Great. So is this something you can sort of update the group on the latest status, or
right.
The person that reach out to us.
The person that you were in touch with, I think, is Peg Hall.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And she and I are planning to write a My Turn piece.
Nice.
So I'll be updating her on what I've heard tonight, and we'll work on it this week.
Okay, great. Thank you. And feel free to reach out for any details.
Great. Yeah. And I'm hopeful that it will be. I had sent the letter that we sent to the mayor. I had sent also to the letters to the editor, and I did get a response from Joan Livingston saying that by the time she was looking at that, it was kind of outdated because the postponement had already been announced, but she specifically invited me to resubmit it, update it, resubmit it, or to write a My Turn piece. So I've told her to expect one from us.
Well, I wonder, Jan, if looking ahead, if it would make sense for you to write something worded in the assumption that this is put on the agenda, or something that you could modify very easily if it is does, maybe if we are successful on Tuesday, in the next week or so, getting this postponed again and put on the agenda for vote by city council, because it seems like that would be a really important timing, to have a lot of outpouring, maybe once that happens.
You know, there was a little static, so I'm wondering if you could just repeat what you said so that I can hear it more clearly.
I was just saying that the timing of a publication, it would be very powerful to have that, are able to have the 13-acre parcel withdrawn from the auction and put on the agenda for the city council.
I agree. I also know that the recorder publishes My Turn pieces when they feel like it. So I think our best bet is to get it in as early as we can. But Peg is out of town, so we're not going to be able to work on it together for at least a couple of days. So it would be helpful if you do meet with the mayor to update me as soon as you have any more information, so we don't write something that's already out of date, as you say.
Okay, so just to formalize this, should we like make a motion that we're going to do all these things or like make a motion to direct me to set up this meeting, or I'm not sure. I don't know if it needs to happen that way, but
Well, I think what I had suggested before, and maybe got bogged down in like the specifics of what it was we were asking, was, do you think that it's worth asking the mayor if she would prefer to have a meeting with just us, or if we should set up a special meeting that she would?
yeah, that's my plan.
Okay. And then depending on the response, you would either schedule a private meeting with her Monday or Tuesday, whenever there's slots, or set up another public meeting for this time next Tuesday. Is that?
Yeah, I think so. And then, so if I call the mayor's office tomorrow, am I, laying out exactly what we want to tell the mayor, or just, that we want to set up a meeting? And I guess we could say that, like, if we are meeting with the mayor in person, we had mentioned having some sort of agenda or something, so she knows what we're coming with. So maybe call, if it's a private meeting, just say that we could send an agenda of what we want to discuss before the meeting.
And we have to post it for a public meeting anyway, so.
Yeah, but I'm saying if it's like a private meeting with the mayor.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach.
I think so too, just so we don't have any more wheels turning, she won't say, I'll get back to you with that. We can hopefully close the loop.
Yeah.
So I motion to authorize Travis to contact the mayor's office and, depending on the response, either schedule a meeting with the mayor or a special meeting of the Conservation Commission to address a request to transfer the property, request the city council to transfer the custodianship of the 13-acre parcel to the Conservation Commission, which would require the properties to the auction to be postponed further.
Or
That's
all. Withdrawn. Is there a second on that? Okay. Any further, seconded by Fletcher, any further discussion on that? Anyone against the motion? Anyone abstaining? Okay, that passes unanimously, and I will do that. All that Rachel said.
I have a couple of pieces of information which sound like they're probably immaterial at this point, but the 1971 map shows clearly how the 13 acres reaches the river by what route and what the points of demarcation are, the boundaries. And if the mayor would like to know exactly what she'll be losing in taxes on that parcel, I have my most recent tax bills here, the past year of them. And we could see what that added up to. But it doesn't sound like you're trying to sell her on that point and about money for that parcel.
Yeah, but Stephen, if you did have time to drop off any maps that you do have,
it seems like the city must have this somewhere. Or maybe the city doesn't have it and only the river.
Yeah, if it wasn't recorded,
Conservancy has it.
Yeah, if it wasn't recorded, it might be difficult to find. But
okay,
we could even just a picture, like a zoomed-in picture on a phone that you emailed to us would work great too. I mean.
Commonwealth of Massachusetts, registered land surveyor, blah, 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 blah. Yep. Land. Yep. Don't know if it was. Yes. Okay. Email it. Can I email it? If someone gave me a phone number, texting would be easier. I have limited facilities for email at the moment.
Okay.
Okay. Steve, I can send you my phone number, Stephen.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
I will bow out. Thank you for your
Okay.
thorough consideration of these matters.
Thanks.
Good night.
So we do have more items on the agenda. We should probably move on at this point. Next was a hybrid meetings update. I'm not sure if there are any updates on that.
I have nothing yet, but I will be reaching out to the public television folks who seem to have the most info on that soon, and also to the Dedham Conservation Commission, who were working out some kinks to get some feedback on it. But if anybody has strong opinions either way, let me know.
Okay. And so the rest of the agenda is project monitoring and site visit scheduling. Is there anything to go over there, Hannah?
There is at the bottom of the list, the Green River Utility Line Structures relocation off of Health Camp. There are two things that we need to address. One, the planting plan that they sent us needs to be approved, and two, we need to address the seed mix. Tracy Sedalter is on the call from TRC.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Tracy.
Good evening. Nice to talk to you all again.
Thanks for sticking through the entire meeting so far.
I'm not gonna lie, I did eat some dessert and do some phone scrolling, so but happy to chat now.
Awesome. I have the planting plan up on my screen. I'm happy to screen share, or Tracy, if you'd like to talk about the seed mix, whichever is fine by me.
Sure. So we can, if you have the planting plan up. Dawn Travellini, who you guys did get to talk with, she's the National Grid Environmental PM for the project. They had come up with this planting plan. We know that you guys had initially requested that some of the, shrubs that were needed to come down get replaced. So obviously we had to get something that would be compatible with the right-of-way, something that's not going to get too tall, that can be trimmed as necessary. So the forestry crew came up with this. And I don't know if you want to zoom in just on the planting area, but we've come up with some arrowwood, I think some American hazelnut, and then I can't remember what the other recommended planting was. But if you look in the legend, it'll tell you what species and then what number of, and then the Chinese junipers. So that's the number and the species that the forestry crew had recommended. So Once construction is completed, we would plan to put those in as long as you guys approved them. I think those 3 species have a shot of outcompeting the knotweed at some point. So hopeful that they'd have at least a shot to grow up and kind of compete with that. So that's sort of what the forestry crew recommended. And obviously, that would be post-construction as part of our, finalizing the site after construction. So there's that. And then the other item that we had wanted to discuss with the Conservation Commission was the seed mix requirement. Dawn had sent over a pollinator seed mix that did include, I believe, winter rye, and had hoped that the Conservation Commission would approve it. We do know that the original order of conditions says that you would only like to see native plants go, seed mixes get planted. And the reason that National Grid has specifically recommended this a mix of pollinator as well as the winter rye, we are going to be kind of late in the season as this project comes to a close. So obviously we want to make sure that anything we put down is going to actually, germinate fairly quickly to ensure that we're going to get, erosion control from having plants on site, kind of help to stabilize things. And then the other main concern that we have with having, only native species is just, I know it's been a while since we were all on site together, but the amount of Japanese knotweed at that site really is going to significantly outcompete anything. If you go down there right now, it doesn't look like that because it doesn't look like there's that much Japanese knotweed now that we have matting down, but it really is. I mean, I know you.
Tracy, did Tracy's sound cut out for everybody else too?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Hannah, would you mind scrolling down while we wait so we can see what the legend was? I was just looking for the scientific names. And I can't find it in the folder.
There aren't any scientific names on here.
This is also available in the OOC folder within the Health Camp Road folder in the upcoming. Yep.
For that.
Is Tracy muted or did her audio?
No, her audio is still on. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for now and try to do a little tech support. I can't mute or unmute Tracy. I'm wondering if something is frozen on her end.
It's a sad state of affairs if her computer was working properly for that whole entire discussion that she had to do with.
Yeah.
Maybe the battery died.
Oh, okay. Tracy?
Hi, everybody. I'm so sorry. I have no idea what happened to my connection, so please forgive me. I was like, I've been on the call for 2 hours and now I lose it. So I apologize. Anyway, so I think I can't recall how far along you guys could still hear things. So if I'm repeating myself, forgive me. But, essentially I was just saying that, where the Japanese knotweed does form such a large, dense cover, we're just worried that we will have an issue getting some of those native species to actually germinate late in the season, and try and compete with those at the same time. So we've had a lot of success with this pollinator mix throughout the state. It's something that National Grid uses consistently to restore their sites. So they have asked that you guys review it and hopefully approve it for using in restoration at this site. So, and I figured I'd be on tonight in case anybody had any questions or concerns and you wanted to talk about it. So.
Do we have a list of the pollinator species? Am I missing that too? That not in the OOC folder?
I don't think so.
You want the actual mix, Hannah? Can you not find it?
No, yeah. So, Kristen, you're asking for the seed mix?
Yeah, just curious what's in it. I mean,
Yeah, of course.
Let me
There's
see
a
if I can
wetland
find it real quick.
seed mix and an upland seed mix PDFs in the like one folder up off Heath Road NOI Tower relocation, but they were put in on July 13th of this year by Eric. I don't know if those are the ones that.
is that the pollinator mix, Stacy? The same thing as the upland restoration seed mix?
No, there's nothing that says pollinator on it.
Here's the pollinator seed mix. I'll put it in the chat for the meeting. This is the one that we looked at last time as well.
Oh.
I think my first thought is that the condition that we have does say that only native species. I lost it now. I had it open in a tab and I think I closed it. It said that only native species would be planted within the resource areas or buffer zones. And so to me, it seems like if we were going to approve something that wasn't all native species, we would need to have like an amended order of conditions to, otherwise we wouldn't be approving something, as the conditions state what they should be. That's just my first reaction.
Yeah, I guess there's also the question of like and first of all, I don't think that native and non-aggressive are the same thing. So I certainly invasive species are aggressive. That's sort of what defines them as invasive, but I don't think that it's true that you have to look toward other exotic species in order to find other things that are aggressive. There are certainly native species that are very aggressive. And I don't think that there's necessarily, like, I think you'd have to make an argument for the ecological value of something else that was non-native that you would be putting in a place to compete with Japanese knotweed. Like, why is that better than Japanese knotweed if neither of them are native? I understand that, like, establishing something in the fall is important, but I think annual rye, would be an exception, like could be included in any seed mix that also contain native seeds. And the fall is actually a really great time to plant native seed mixes, meadow seed mixes, and grass seed. So I don't see, like, I don't really see the justification here for not sticking to a native seed mix. And I think that condition applies to all plants and not just seed mixes. So there's the Chinese juniper are not native either. And I'm assuming that American hazel is American hazelnut, but without any botanical names on the plan, it's not really possible to approve plants by their common names, because plants often have like 4 different common names, and sometimes the same common is given to more than one plant. So really the only way that we should be approving planting plants is with their botanical names.
I completely I do agree with you. I wasn't given the Latin names, so I I would assume that what they're recommending is American hazelnut, but I can confirm that and then, you know, send things along to Hannah and have you guys look at it at the next meeting.
I'll just add, I did find the language, just to remind everyone what the language is in the order of conditions. It says native plant species, only native non-invasive plant species may be planted on site within resource areas and or buffer zone. Seed mixes shall also consist of 100% native non-invasive species. No site plantings shall include invasive species. This shall be noted in the certificate of compliance and shall be an ongoing condition. Just to remind everyone. Yeah, so again, to me, I think that, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I don't think we can like restrict anyone like to a specific, you know, company necessarily, but I've had a lot of success working with Ernst Conservation Seeds. They have native mixes, and I've had a lot of success having them established in the fall. So if you need other places to go to compare, if this source isn't it doesn't provide the option of native seeds, then that would be a place to cross check.
Hannah, was that the one that you had sent along?
No, the one that I sent along, I believe, was from the same website as this Northeast. Yeah, it was from American Meadows.
Okay. All right. Well, I will. I'll plan to share this with the National Grid team, and I did hear that you're going to be leaving us, but I will continue to coordinate with you over the next couple of weeks, and then whoever becomes the interim, if whether that's Eric or somebody else, I'll continue to coordinate them, and we'll get back to you guys.
That sounds great. I'll keep Eric posted on all of this as well.
Yeah, and I would say Eric would probably be the person to contact once Hannah is no longer employed by the city of Greenfield.
All right, great. Thanks, guys, for taking the time to chat tonight, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thanks. Nice to talk to you, Tracy.
Okay.
Besides, sorry.
Go ahead.
Besides that, there are no other updates on the project monitoring and site visit scheduling.
Okay. Well, that was the last item on our agenda. It does say that our next meeting date would be Tuesday, October 12th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. That is barring any special meetings that may come up between now and then. That will be our next regular meeting.
So it's bad timing because we have also we already have like a very important, very time sensitive and urgent matter to discuss with the mayor. But the fact that since the Greenfield Conservation Commission agent has been a part-time position rather than combined with a planning position for full-time, we've had 3 agents in 3 years, which is an excessive amount of turnover. And I feel like this is not going to change unless we're able to offer a full-time position. And I find it kind of ridiculous that a town like Wendell can employ a conservation commission agent full-time and Greenfield, the city of Greenfield, cannot. And I don't know what the route is. I actually asked Eric after Cassie left if the Conservation Commission has ever been involved in the hiring process and in discussion when there is turnover about if we had any agency in that process. And he said that there's no reason why not. It hasn't been done, just in terms of selecting or interviewing candidates. But I think like, what's the avenue? What is the process to try and convince the city to recombine a position that is competitive with all of the other towns that are looking for conservation commission agents? It costs so much time for people to come and get to know our city, and it costs Eric a lot of time. He has to do an enormous amount of interviewing and outreach to try to get the position filled. And it costs us a lot of time in terms of our efficiency.
I agree. There's a lot of time wasted on constantly onboarding and offboarding staff when, we could offer better benefits or better hours or better pay. And I don't know what's wrong with this position, why it keeps getting refilled so frequently, but it must be one of those things,
I think the
And
problem,
oh, go ahead.
sorry. I think the problem is that it's a part-time position that doesn't offer benefits. If it were full-time and benefited, I think you would have a much easier time holding on to people.
Makes sense.
Just anticipating the pushback from a budgetary standpoint, I wonder, and this is maybe just really dumb, but if there's any potential for combining like 2 towns into a full-time position that's ever been done or legal or anything. But I know Bernardston was talked about before as people as needing capacity or something, and
They do it with departments, right? That's been in the news recently.
Do they? With
But
rec
isn't
departments?
that what Sarah left for? Doesn't she have two part-time that they this made full-time job, kind of 2 different towns?
Yeah, that sounds right, but I guess I'm suggesting like combining them into a single position that can have coordinated hours and benefits as well. Well, I'm guessing two part-times don't make benefits. But anyway, that I guess I can ask that question to Eric or somebody.
So the position has been combined with the planning position in the past. When I joined the commission, Maureen Pollock was the Conservation Commission agent, and she was also a town planner. So she was a full-time with benefits employee of the city of Greenfield. And she worked as the Conservation Commission agent from July of 2013 to January of 2018. So it's basically close to 4.5 years or 5 years. And we haven't had anybody be able to hang on the position nearly that long since then.
Yeah,
so we're in Greenfield, and we were not part of any decision when Maureen left for that position to not be re-advertised, like not to be kept as a combined position.
Yeah, I spoke with Eric about this too, and
yeah, and I did wonder why that wasn't.
Yeah, and Eric told me that he felt the previous administration did not value planning, the planning department, but that the current administration, he believed, does value it more highly. So it seems like that's why it went away, maybe. But and then unfortunately, inertia has maybe kept it that way. But yeah, I'm not. I guess right, and then see. I don't know. I don't know what the process is for doing that.
And there used to be at one time there was, I think, five planners for the city, back in the early 2000s, and they just, I don't know what happened to all the positions, but
The FERCog sort of absorbed some of that. Hannah, did you say you're effective immediately, or is there some time left? Or
No, I'm putting in my official 2 weeks notice on Thursday.
Okay.
So I will be here for the next Conservation Commission and the Thursday or meeting, and then the Thursday afterwards will be my last day.
Got it.
Okay. The day after when the auction is supposed to be.
Right.
That's how we can all remember it. Since that's what's on the top of all of our marks. Yeah.
Well, I had a little bit of an email exchange with Eric about the hiring process and just what the commission's involvement in it should be or could be earlier in the spring when Cassie left. So I maybe I'll just send him an email and ask him like what the process is, and now that the position is opening up again, if there's any opportunity here to try and combine that back with a planning position or a rec position. I don't know. It seems like it's pretty clear that it's not competitive without being able to offer full-time and benefits. And it doesn't have to be full-time devoted to the Conservation Commission, but we're getting a short end of stick here.
Yeah, that sounds good. If you want to reach out to Eric.
I think it would be good to get his at least his take or opinion on it before. I also remember what somebody was like, oh yeah, you need to go ask the mayor, but I feel like at this point there's other things that we need to ask the mayor.
Yeah,
there's a little like pork like slipping into
gotta stage those, you know.
to a bill. Give us 13 acres and a Conservation Commission position to boot.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on your new job, Hannah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited. And I really, truly am sad to leave the Conservation Commission. This has really been an awesome learning experience and really, really cool to see it from the inside.
You were here for some exciting stuff too.
Yeah.
It's usually not this exciting.
Not since 1998.
Yeah. Well, would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Is there a second? Erica has seconded. Anyone? Any further discussion? Anyone opposed? Abstaining? All right. The motion to adjourn passes unanimously. We are adjourned at 9:15 p.m.